Are you going to work? All right. Welcome to the Howler Mouse channel. Looks like we've been live for a few seconds. And the computer caught up just in time. So, anyway, 30 seconds in before I knew we were live. This is Howler Mouse. Welcome to the Howler Mouse channel. Uh, Make sure you are subscribed. I think my analytics have let me know that there are 69% of current viewers on my newer and older stuff are not subscribed. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you thumbs it up. And make sure you hit that bell to know when I do these shows and stuff, because I have been on the road, out of the house, running around, doing things, getting stuff done, and ended up hitting auctions and went to a fantastic uh, comic book convention. Actually, I'm actually, oh my gosh, what is it? I think I am probably about a half hour after getting home, about a 3 hour drive. But I did split the drive up with the great Anderson clan this morning. This morning, I shot a really quick live show to let you know why there was no show this morning, no show last night, and that there would be something today. And here we are. So yesterday, I ended up hauling the trash, working for about an hour. And then one of my friends had messaged me to let me know about an auction in the next town that was going on that was vintage Star Wars stuff, right? There's probably about 300 items that were vintage toys, uh, and going back at least to the 70s, a few toys going back to the 70s. And then there were also Star Wars stuff going back at least to the 90s and to the last few months where Ollie's outlet stores had things, right? And it was kind of fun to watch. I won a few things super cheap. And one of the things I ended up winning, my number is number 30. I'll go ahead and tell you what I paid for this. $15. Nobody was really bidding on this. They had online biddings going on. So I went for this. I now have a Mego style, not Mego at all, but 12-inch double pack here of Darth Vader and Darth Maul to go with the things I have up here. The 12-inch figures that I have of Planet of the Apes and things like that, going back to the 90s. So these will be very nice additions if I ever decide to open this, right? So yeah, that was really all I got. I did win a lunch box, some vintage lunch boxes, but I already have someone where I work going to buy those off me, so I'm going to make over half my money back without a problem. So I got to tell you, and that was the auction yesterday. This is the 35th anniversary of the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from 1990, a classic that I love. And I was 17 when I got to see that in the theater, which I thought was fantastic. That was my goal yesterday. All week, they're having 3 showings a day in a local theater of the 35th edition, of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie. Hopefully I will definitely get to see that, because I think it has an opening to let you know that this is the 35th anniversary of it. Thanks for being here. I've seen some of my friends actually post some of those pictures, screenshots, we'll call them that. So, because it's illegal to record or film in a theater, and put them on Facebook. So I really want to go just to see that little intro that they've done. If you've seen it, let me know. And I didn't get to do that yesterday because I ended up hanging out at the auction, having lunch with my friend. And then by the next thing I know, it's late in the afternoon. I missed 2 of the showings, and I wasn't about to go out at 9:30 because I had to get up early this morning to meet my friends halfway and go to Charlotte to this great convention. This is the same convention that I went to in the spring and had a blast with old Josh, if you remember Josh. And this time I went down with Anderson, and I'll tell you what, I made out much better money wise. The con was bigger. The comic book hobby itself is definitely healthy, you know. Uh, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it gets under some people's skin, but I can only work with what I'm seeing. But the new stuff is just it's not selling, man. It's not selling. I saw dollar boxes with newer stuff, right? And I'm talking Marvel, DC. It just amazes me to go around and see boxes, tons of short boxes and long boxes of comics from like the last 7, 8 years. Just sitting there, nobody's interested, and and it was blowing my mind because I saw more people going after Dragon Ball Z stuff. Old epic line horror books like Clive Barker's horror books. There was old school guys with their printed off list of comic books where they were checking off stuff from the Bronze Age and the going up to the 80s and things like that. I saw a complete set of their old school original Image books, 50 cents a piece for the entire run of Youngblood. The first couple issues of oh my God, what was it? The Cyber book by Mark Silvestre, Cyber Force, that kind of stuff. It was very interesting to see what was sitting there and what wasn't selling and everything. A lot of the dealers that were there were saying they were having 50% off sales, and a lot of them did. There was a lot of dollar boxes marked down to 50-cent boxes. A lot of stuff like that. But there were a few dealers who were like, hey, everything's 50% off and everything. But they had marked their wall books so far up that by the time you slashed off 50%, it's what the book was actually worth. A lot of people were admitting that they use eBay for pricing, but we met one dealer who was like, hey man, I look at the top and the lowest and I see what sells, what actually sold, and he tries to come across for what a price like that. He gets the range, the median range of what everything is. And then he turned around and had things actually for 50% off. And I picked up 2 or 3 things from him. So all in all, it was a great show with some great stuff. John is here. How are you doing, John? So to prepare for the con, I've been doing this for decades now. We always have the book bag. You should always have a book bag. In that book bag to take, you should take a beverage. I would say something to actually keep you hydrated. One of the things I also take, or sometimes it's a snack, and it's going to be something simple like a bag of peanuts, like a granola bar, something you feel like is relatively healthy there to give you a little bit of energy and stuff to keep the headache from going away. Definitely take some form of hygiene products here for that, because con crud is real. I actually feel like I might have a little bit of the con crud. Con crud is, you have old dusty comics, plastic bags that are deteriorating, bunch of people in a not well ventilated place. And the other thing is I wished I had looked up the guy's name before I did this, because I met a celebrity. They actually had celebrity. They had some old school Russian wrestler from the 80s there, one of the Volkovs or something like that. But the guy that got me is that you'll know this guy, right? He was the nerdy guy with the glasses and the bow tie in the movie Grease. He was in 1941. He played the same kind of nerdy guy with the glasses with a wooden dummy. He does voices on Dexter. God, I can't think of his name. And I ended up talking to him. He called me sir. He was very nice. I was thinking about going back and get a picture with him, but I had better things to spend $25 on, right? Let me see if I can find him, man. But it was so cool to see him. Cast of Grease, 1978. But yeah, it was really cool to see that celebrity, because feel like I've seen him over since I was 5 years old. Eddie Dizzon. Here we go, right? It was this guy, So it was actually kind of cool. Shook his hand. He called me sir. And I told him, I'm like, well, I'm going to go over here and freak out for a minute, because I actually saw Grease at the drive-in when I was 5 years old. So that was a thing, right? So I think we've stalled long enough to get people in here to give them a chance to do it. Some people are still popping on. So for you guys in the future, it is, what is this? August 17th. Today was a comic book convention in Charlotte, the Charlotte Comic Con, I think they call it. They have it several times a year. This is my haul that I got today that we went down there. I literally just got home 30 minutes ago, right? I was thinking about shooting a proper video for this, but I'm like, hey, I like doing the live shows. I like the comments. I like getting feedback, and what better thing to do on a Sunday night before we go to work for the week. There may not be, make sure you have subscribed to this channel, hit the bell, make sure you thumb it up, and go ahead and please share this this video. For you people that have been sharing my videos, I much appreciated. That's fantastic, and I seem to get a lot of feedback in Instagram messages from people that watch this and stuff, right? So any kind of feedback, message me through, follow me on Instagram. Link should be in the bottom when this re-uploads, and let's go ahead and see if we can get to this haul. So, excuse me. A long day, man. I started my day out around 3:30. Woke up early, couldn't go back to sleep. Okay, I think we're good. Con crud. So the first thing that happened is Anderson, who we talk about quite often here. We made plans to meet halfway. Then he and his wife would drive. I drove an hour and a half, then they drove an hour and a half. And he went to Ollie's and went open. And Ollie's outlet stores have these 10-pack of comics for like $5.99. And he knew I'm a fan of Mike Allred, who I cannot believe is in his 60s now. And he gave me this issue of Spaceman from AAA Pop Comics, AAA Pop Comics. I do not. It's called Spaceman, Oni Press, Pop Comics, but I do not see a number on this, right? So yeah, we have a Mike Allred. I really can't say anything about it. He got it in a 10-pack, threw it my way. Now the interesting thing about this con is I saw the wall books, and as I went through some of the boxes, a couple things happened. A lot of the wall books that were there, we covered about 75% of the con. It only ran from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We went out to eat. We lasted about 4 hours, and it was time to go. So we could eat and get back because we had quite a drive. And I got to say, a lot of the wall books made me feel fantastic about my collection once again. If there is ever a hot spot to be a comic book collector and have a ton of cons to go through, from Heroes Con, Charlotte Con, Charlotte Comic Con, there's so many of them. And then you have Winston-Salem up the road, who has comic book conventions and comic stores. Heroes are hard to find in Charlotte and stuff. That is a healthy place to be a comic book collector. There's just so much there and so much that's constantly going on, right? So as I was looking at the wall books, I've been collecting long enough to where I felt fantastic about my collection. I have many books that I bought off the stand, or I have bought over the last, we'll say, 30 years at yard sales and flea markets and things like that, that are like $60, $70, $80, $120 books according to the prices in North Carolina. And then as I went through the cheaper boxes, dollar boxes, $2 boxes, $3 boxes, 50-cent boxes, I had to fight the urge to upgrade. I already had these books. There's a few things I upgraded. And one of the things I upgraded was this 1994 collection of the Best of Erie magazine with old Uncle Ernie. I think it's his name, Uncle Ernie, by Kyle Baker. Nope, Kelly Jones. Excuse me, Kelly Jones, doing the cover of this from 1994. I actually was going to pull it off my shelf and show you my beat up copy that I've carried around for, who knows, 30 years, 29 years. Something like that. But it's not there. I can't find it, which means it'll pop up after we do this. But yeah, this is fantastic. This is, like I said, a collection of Erie magazine, the greatest of stories. And we have stories by Angelo Torres, John Severin, Johnny Craig, EC Comics people, guys. EC Comics. Those last two are EC Comics. Gene Colan, Steve Ditko, Neil Adams, Reed Crandall, Al Williamson. One of my favorites. I love those old school guys, man. I love those old school guys. Another EC Comics alum, Flash Gordon alum, if you will. Jeff Jones, just a fantastic artist, where I actually found Jeff Jones in his heavy metal work. And this is before he transitioned, guys, and was married to Louise Simonson, Simonson. And the classic, the legend, the man, Alex Toth, right? It's Neil Adams, Alex Toth, a bunch of guys, and it's just some of the great black and white magazine horror stories, the best by those guys, right? I'm a sucker for 70s horror. I'm a sucker for 50s old school EC comic guys, off of Jack Kirby and stuff. And one of the first things I bought, I think I got these for $5. Okay. A couple of the tables were interesting. They would put these dots on them. I'm going to show you this one. And I think these were $3 dots. They had yellow, green, purple, you know, and it was like $2, $3, $5, $10, $25 or something, right? So you had to kind of look. They just went ahead and did that. So these were $3 books. I just made a deal to get them for $5, and there might be a third one in here, right? But it's the Lone Wolf and Cub from First Comics, square bound, prestige format, magazine form, black and white stuff. Lone Wolf and Cub. I don't know what more to say. For the fact that these came to America, and I'm well on my way with having the entire set that First Comics put out. This is the stuff that, you know, the first couple of issues of these reprints for America, translations, if you will, of fantastic manga. They influenced Frank Miller. Thus, Frank Miller did the cover for some of them. A fantastic viewer of the channel actually sent me the first issue signed by Frank Miller, which was fantastic. This is one of my favorite books. This highly influenced, like I said, Frank Miller, influences Ronin, his other works, Elektra, things like that. And of course, there are tons of movies. If you have HBO Max, is where I found them last time, of the spaghetti western type samurai stories of this Ronin and this little boy on they're Hyperviolent on HBO Max, I think. You know, I got to watch a few of them, and I was like, wow, this thing was an institution long before it came to America. So yeah, issues 19 and 31 of Lone Wolf and Cub, and this thing only ran in like 45 issues or something. So I'm well on my way of completing these. Now, another book series that I'm about to complete. This was the one that you guys have heard me, and I took it upon a challenge upon myself to get every issue for $1. And so far, I have kept my word on that, except for a proper issue number 1, which I ended up spending like $4 on or something that I found. And I feel like that's within the game here. Because what happened is several years ago at a comic book convention in Bristol, the first year they had that one around COVID times, I stopped into a flea market and saw they had a bunch of this Immortal Hulk book, you know, priced for a bunch of them for in the dollar box. Well, I went to that flea market, and after going to that flea market, I was able to get to the con. And as I got in there, I found the same books that people were charging from $20 to $40. And I was trying to make a deal with the guy that's kind of bringing them up to one of the guys that had these books for marked up for that price. I was like, I just found these for $1. And one of them kind of smarted off to me a little bit, like, I guess you can just go back to the flea market, you know. So I did. So I decided that I was going to get this entire series. I didn't know it was going to run 50 issues at the time. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to get every one of these for $1 a piece. And I wasn't really impressed with the series. And then you guys, the viewers and stuff on here on this channel and stuff, were like, no, you've got to read the Immortal Hulk. I read a few issues, and I was sort of like, this is just the standard. Every book in the late 80s from Marvel had this level and quality of storytelling, you know. And then all of a sudden, I read it in order. And then I got to issue around 8 or 9 or something. And I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And I came up here and I was like, you guys were right. So now that I'm down to like maybe even 3 issues of this with its various variant covers, this series ran for like 50 issues. And if you get on your CLZ app or whatever app you get and you want to see the entire series, there's over 500 issues of Immortal Hulk thanks to the variant covers, even though there's just 50 issues and maybe a special or something worth of story. You follow me? So this had a beginning, middle, and an end, right? And this is issue 13 with a fantastic Alex Ross cover. And I'm like, one more off the board. So I'm anywhere between 3 and 5 issues, and I'll have the entire series. 99.9% of it I got for $1 a piece or less. Yes, if you followed me over the years while I've been doing this, I found some of these for less than $1 after I got a big haul and made a deal. Okay. So yeah, Immortal Hulk number 13, one more off the deal, right? So this one was really, really had just a little bit of a story, man. This next book, I found another one of these dollar bins, right? And I bought off this guy earlier in the year. And when I was there with him, I ended up getting a fantastic deal on this hardback edition of Roger Stern and Mike Mignola's Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, the hardback. This was the hardback. So I was keeping an eye out for that guy, and I found him. He's in a different spot. I don't know if he remembered me or not, but it felt like he did, you know, and we talked a little bit. So Around the place, I get chatty with this place. We're all comic book collectors. I might recommend a book to somebody. I might ask them something they pulled out of the, out of the box. Every now and then. Nothing weird, nothing creepy, because we're all in this together. And a lot of people were like looking at me like, "What the hell are you talking to me for, man?" Real heavy competition. A lot of guys were very intense. And then every now and then you ran into a couple of guys who were just like us, who were just like, "Hey, this is fun. We're just looking for comics. This is great." And they saw me pull this out, and this was initiated the conversation. I'm like, "Yes, I got this out of this here dollar box." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, all day long." And I ended up having a few great conversations with a few people there. There's a lot of people there that run, I mean, it didn't really feel like this back in the 90s and the 2000s, even 10 years ago, but there is definitely a feel of greed there. You know what I mean? Where a high competitive, we're here to get the books and make money, or whatever, whatever. It is what it is. We have to let go of these things because we cannot control how things are, but you can spot these guys. You can spot these guys. They're very intense. I don't know, man. But thank goodness there are still people who read their books, and we all want to see each other get great stuff and get a great deal on it because they saw this. This is now my reader copy. I have a humble brag because I still have my newsstand copy that I bought off the rack when this came out in 1990, right? But this is Uncanny X-Men number 268, the classic Jim Lee drawn story of a flashback story where Logan, before he really knew he had claws, met a Captain America in 1940s World War II era Mandapore, where they're trying to fight to save a little girl. And then you would flash forward to the beginning, and you see Wolverine and Jubilee doing their best Batman and Robin. And I think they meet the Scarlet Witch. So it turns out that Wolverine still has his amnesia. He doesn't remember his past. And it turns out the little girl was, yeah, you got it, the Scarlet Witch. So that made her like almost 60 in this book. So yeah, I don't know if Marvel ever really addressed the fact that the Black Widow, is much older than she appears. You know what I mean? So who knows? Who knows, right? So yeah, but like I said, this is my reader copy, and at 1.2, look at this, right? This is a beat up copy, and this is what you got to look for. This is why I was glad it was in a dollar box. Maybe this fell off another book. I don't know, but they were trying to say that at some point this was a 9.2 and it was going to go for $15. Dollar box all day long for a reader copy of a classic Chris Claremont, Jim Lee story. I don't even want to say it's an X-Men story. It's a great Marvel story, if you will. So that's going to be around because Jim Lee did some great stuff in this book. All right. Some great stuff. Comic book crap. Comic Con. That's right. John, I love the X-Men as a kid. And I'm glad you're doing great, man. Great to see you, man. All right. So this here, right here, will finish a run. And I knew if I just see, I'm a very patient man when it comes to these things, right? I'm a very patient man. We had, when you do this hobby and you travel and things, you kind of get a nose for things. You kind of get a feel where comic books may be hid or comic books may be sold in places you wouldn't know about, things like that. Or you just kind of know that you will run across this book, right? And this is one of Jack Kirby's less successful books at DC, if you will. I feel like it was, even though it does have its fans. And of course, thanks to Neil Gaiman's Sandman, the book got a bit of a second life, in my opinion. But who knows? Who knows? I'm just talking about my perspective here, right? But anyway, I now have all 6 issues of Jack Kirby's Sandman. I think I get this out of a dollar box in fantastic shape. It's probably for a 50-year-old book, 52-year-old book, I believe. It's in fantastic shape. So now I have all, I believe, 6 issues of Jack Kirby and Joe Simons, the guys that created Captain America. They created this version of Sandman where, you know, it really feels like it was inspired by a 20s Little Nemo. I think that's what it was. A Little Nemo comic strip from the 20s where the kid traveled in dreams on his bed and stuff like that. But anyway, but you talk about having a very high-tech Batman feel. But anyway, we have the Sandman, who lives inside of a little kid named Jed's head in his dream space, and he has this dream whistle to call up Brute and Glob, his nightmares that work for him. And he has a Sandman cave, or headquarters that was all high tech and everything, just kind of floats around in the dreaming. And he comes out and he battles nightmares and stuff like that, right? It's not very. I've never really found a lot of subtext in it. It seems like it was straightforward to me as I read it as a much younger man, because there was 2-3 issues in the house. It felt like I was reading a Batman 66 wannabe book. You know what I mean? But hey, I'm a Kirby nut. What do I know? You know what I mean? So I had to grab this one. I have a full set. This is probably my 3rd or 4th issue of this. And I always feel like this should be more of a key book than it is, right? Because when it came out, the people who collected this series, you had to get one. You had to scarf it up. You had to around here. You had to be there, or just to make sure that it was on your pool. Even if it was on your pull list, you needed to be there the Wednesday that your comic book shop opened when this book came out, right? Because this is issue 69 of the Neil Gaiman Sandman story. Before we had Daniel become the new Sandman, if you will. Morpheus is always going to be Sandman to people, even though Daniel's the current version of Sandman. But this is the proper death of Morpheus. Okay, his sister comes to him. It's very reminiscent of issue number 8 when we see the first appearance of death, when Sandman Morpheus is on that park bench feeding the pigeons, bread. She comes and sits down onto him when he's on this mountaintop, if you will, right? The kindly ones are coming to get him because he broke their rules, Anyway, but yeah, I saw this in a dollar bin, and I'm like, yeah, I got to get this. The Sandman books are going to remain classics despite the Neil Gaiman controversy, things like that. So yeah, a lot of people are like, this may be the last time you need to go ahead and grab, may not want to grab any Sandman books, like they're going to depreciate. They're not going to depreciate on, at least in those first 25 issues, probably, right? So this, come on. What we got here? Oh, comic crack. Sorry, man, I froze up. I wanted to give it a second here. And man, the comments all loaded up when I froze up here, right? Comic crack, always jealous of the Akira box set behind you. Man, if you can find a way to get one, luckily, like I said, my wife got it at a huge discount. I was very happy to find that out. And I told her she overdid it. If there is any way, shape, or form, if you have read Akira and you have sampled Akira and it's your thing, I just, you got to find a way to get one, man. You got to. Okay. Excellent Sandman find. Thank you. And then the Library 88. I love the Sandman, Kirby, Gaiman, and the old Golden Age Sandman too. Makes me think Etrigan, who was a Kirby character, but also an Alan Moore character in a way. Yeah, a lot of people were able to mold and Matt Wagner on the Demon, mold and shape them. Here it is. An ex-girlfriend of mine picked this up for me. I think I sent her the money, or I bought her some Teen Titans stuff. God, has it about 9 years ago? Good grief, I'm getting old. But anyway, yeah, I have the Joe Simon, Jack Kirby complete Sandman stuff that they worked on, where they put him in the gold and purple, and out of the gas mask. But yeah, I love that stuff too. I read that stuff as a kid when it was reprinted in the back of some of the Fourth World books. I want to say it was in the Forever People books. But anyway, there's some Fourth World books where they would. No, it's probably, if anything, I bet you think it was the Jimmy Olsen books. I don't know. But anyway, they had reprints in the 70s with the Fourth World books with Kirby of his 40s work, 1940s work, Golden Age work. The Library 88. Oh, yeah, good point. I need to re-get those Matt Wagner Demons again. I've got 1 or 2 of them. I need to go back and read them. Like everything else in this house, right? So some of these have gotten mixed up on the way back. Okay. And there was one guy, I don't know if he got me or maybe he might have got me because he was an elderly gentleman, let's put it that way. And he had thing. I keep freezing up. Anyway, there we go. It was $3 books for $10, and he just had long boxes. No, absolutely no shape, or shape, no organization. There's all sorts of stuff in all these boxes. And he was from Georgia. I think he said he was outside of Athens, Georgia. And I got some shadows I want to show you. This trade, a few things are all kind of mixed up now. And I was like, "Will you take $20 for all of these?" Right? He said yes. But when he gave me my change, he kept $5 extra. And I was just sort of like looking at him. So I'm going to say that this book was $50 and some of these other books were 20. I don't think I spent more than $35 or $40 at this entire con, right? So one of the things I bought, and this seems to be the thing that I'm doing to put on the shelf so I don't have to do this, but there's a series called Earth X, okay, that came out in the late 90s from Marvel. Jim Kruger, Alex Ross, was it Jean Paulion? You might have had a penciler, but it was the Kingdom Come of the Marvel Universe, pulling from the Kirby stuff that Alex Ross and Jim Kruger, I hope his last name's Kruger, I've been calling him that, anyway, came up with 20 years in the future of the Marvel Universe. And it was just fantastic. It was very dystopian, if you will, right? A lot of ties to the Silver Age, gave things a beginning and the end. And even though that was what will we call it in Marvel? We'll say it was set in another timeline. It was a possible future, something like that. Earth X was, to me, fantastic, right? And then you ended up they made it a trilogy: Universe X, then Paradise X, and in each 12-issue maxi series that made up the trilogy, it became more and more existential. So where Earth X sort of embraced the 60s, he came out with Universe X, which sort of embraced Marvel's 70s, if you will, right? So there's 12 issues of this, and it had a different artist and stuff, right? So this is the second half of Universe X saga, Universe X number 8 through 12, and then it had tons of crossovers in it. Universe X, X Universe, X Beast, Iron Man and the Universe X Omnibus. And I have the omnibus up there, right? So yeah, this is half of a very dense miniseries with some of the crossovers that came with it. You talk about going for a cash grab. I enjoy these, and it's nice to have something just to kind of grab and not have to like dig out the Alex Ross box and stuff. To me, Earth X and Justice League versus the Avengers is sort of the bookend for classic Marvel for me. It really is. Anything after that seems to be when Joe Quesada came on. Joe Quesada was responsible for some of this, don't get me wrong. But Joe Quesada really started letting go of continuity, and then we got all that Bendis deconstruction stuff and Avengers Disassembled. And we're talking about things that happened 20 to 25 years ago now. Isn't that wild? And I know I'm not the only one. Now, this was an interesting find. The guy let me have it. I ended up buying one book off of him, right? And I walked away. I had a chance to get a $125 double a hardback slipcase, 2 hardbacks in a slipcase of a cartoonist named Don Martin who worked for Mad Magazine. And it was his complete works from the 50s to the 80s. And I had to walk away to think about it because he wanted $50 for it. And it retails for over $100. I've actually seen it sell for over $250, and I couldn't do it. So I ended up getting some things out of his dollar box. But here's what was very interesting. When I did a live show sometime in the past week, I held up a few books asking if you want me to do individual real short videos showing you some of these books. And I actually had about 4 or 5 people get a hold of me, a few in the live comments, a few in Instagram message and stuff, where they want me to do Captain Carrot. So I kind of got my Captain Carrot books out, and then I sort of looked online a little bit to see if there's any little trivia I didn't know about. And there's a character named Pig Iron, right? With my accent, I'm sure that came out sounding so distinguished. In it, he's think Colossus, right? He's a little bitty tiny piglet, if you will, and then he transforms into his alter ego of Pig Iron, much like Colossus does. He's made of metal and he's purple, is what he looks like, right? And that's what he looks like. And now he's super strong and invulnerable and stuff. Turns out that his alter ego is actually a DC's Golden Age character that was in Leading Comics. And this is the cover for an issue of Leading Comics that the guy just gave me because I told him the story of Captain Carrot and Pig Iron, and that's the pig. Roy Thomas Scott Shaw did the um, Captain Carrot and the Amazing Zoo Crew book because there was some kind of weird licensing deal where they couldn't officially use the comic book versions of just a lot of animals they wanted to use of the Justice League characters. So they did Captain Carrot and the Amazing Zoo Crew, which I think is probably better than what they would have came up with just a lot of character, books. And as a kid, that Captain Carrot book made me want to. I actually would sit around in elementary school and draw animal versions of superheroes, thanks to that book. So anyway, that was just a cool find, right? And then here's what's funny. Am I freezing up as bad as I look? So you guys that have stuck around with me, my connection is unstable. I bet everybody's using it upstairs. There's been storms around here today. Anyway, there's a hurricane. There's a tornado, a hurricane out in the ocean out there, guys. So anyway, for you guys that have stuck through me with my bitching about a lot of modern comics over the last few years, Josh has just texted me, guys. But anyway, for you guys out there who have, been able to hang in there with my ramblings of, how shitty a lot of modern comics are. And there's good stuff out there. Don't get me wrong. It's much harder to find nowadays. But anyway, I started saying that a lot of stuff that Marvel did from 2015 on, it made the new universe of the 80s look like Shakespeare. And what happened with that is I loved the new universe. I was there. You know what I mean? And I know some of those books were really hard to read. Kickers Incorporated was one of the worst things I've ever read. But what happened is I went back and I started reading the second year of the stuff out of it in order. You know what I mean? Not an issue here, not an issue there. The Peter David books of Justice, 4 or 5 of those were like really good. DP7 is actually solid with Mark Grunwald and Paul Ryan staying on for the whole series. John Byrne coming on Starbrand. Starbrand was one of my favorite characters up there with Armor by Neil Adams and Continuity Comics when you got to rare eclectic heroes and stuff. And I was a fan of Cyforce because there was one character in it that he wore a black jacket and camouflage pants like I did in middle school. You know what I mean? Like when that book came out, I'm like, damn God, if he had a mullet, that could be me. You know what I mean? So anyway, I've decided to go ahead and get complete collections. All these 4 of these books, 3 of the books ran for 32 issues. 19 issues on Starbrand, and then Kickers Incorporated, Spitfire and the Troubleshooters, Merc, and Night Mask ran for like maybe 12 issues. So this is a finite universe. But then they came out with a little mini series called The Draft, and that was followed by The War. And the draft, I think, was 2 issues, and the war was 4. So anyway, we ended up getting Cyforce. Cyforce reminded me a lot of the Forever People. The Forever People will come together, put their hands up, and they will form the Infinity Man or summon him, and they would disappear. They would trade places with what they were saying. Well, the Cyforce guys were able to bring the Cyhawk into existence. And I thought this was just so cool. And look how 80s that is. I mean, this is the 80s here, people, right here, There's the Cyhawk again. This is probably an upgrade, and this is when there was more of a coherent universe here, right? So yeah, now I should have close to all of them, right? But this is the last issue of anything that is a new universe, right? So after they had the books, they had the pit happen, which caused political unrest around the world and things like that. Anyway, so they were getting their paranormals and had them working for the government and were building up to a war. First, they had the draft. They had them in the military. Then they came out with a 4-issue miniseries, prestige format, The War, right? So I think I maybe have everything in the new universe I want. Now, I got those super cheap, man. They were like 50 cents a piece. 50 cents a piece. If you want to get them, that's how I say you get them, right? I don't know what world and what event could ever happen to where the new universe books end up being worth a lot of money. That would be amazing. I can't fathom a situation that would happen. All right, what do we got here? Prop One Collector, Peter Porkchops is such an amazing character name. Yeah, it's just, I mean, sometimes this stuff just has to be fun. Funny animals and satire have to be fun. There's I don't know what issue it is. I think it's like issue number 3 of Captain Carrot and the Zoo Crew. because I read the first 3 issues the other night. And there's like little characters in the background. You'll have a thought balloon, even though they're not paying part of the main story. And they had Hunter S. Thompson in it as an animal, thinking about his next book. And it was a satire of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I just kind of cracked up because at 10 years old, 9 years old, whatever it was, I never would have picked up who Hunter S. Thompson was. All right, guys. God, were these dollar books or 50-cent books? This one was 50-cent books. I'm just going to have to tell you what was 50 cents and what was $1, right? So I think I got these for $5, right? And I'm fine with that. We were leaving. This was the last thing to look at. But I really dig the Marvel Age books because I like knowing what year, where I was, and what was going on with buying comics. And the Marvel Age was a preview book that you could only get at comic book shops, direct market. And it was Marvel coming attractions, and they would give you a date, and they would tell you what books were supposed to be in your comic book store and when, with a synopsis and the art in them. And a lot of these have been going for big bucks because they consider some of these like the third printed appearance of Superman's black costume, absurd stuff like that. The real first appearance of Cable and stuff, right? But this was great stuff because, like, you would get articles and interviews of here's the team that did Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown. I think the Simonsons, is that an actual article? Anyway, it's talking about Moon Shadow and Meltdown and all these books that were coming in, Newswatch, the top 10. So if you want to know what was going on at Marvel in the 80s and things like that, we even got a little bit of a quiz and a lot of preview art. There's usually 2 pages of Fred Hembeck stuff. Epic Spotlight, Epic Comics. Marvel had all kinds of different lines, but that's what I'm saying. This was great information. This is great stuff. You're not going to find a lot of this trivia and things like that if you're interested in that sort of thing on Wikipedia. I am a Gru nut, so I will grab anything Sergio Aragonis Gru. Here's number 49. I passed up several of those, ended up selling for a beat up copy. Here's number 67. Who knows what was coming out at the time. Here's number 20, an early 80s issue where we have Letters to Marvel about superheroes, Secret Wars. There's Jim Shooter on the cover. These are always fun issues. There's a John Romita Jr. cover. Preview of The Hearts of Darkness. That was a one-shot where John Romita debuted with a... Howard Mackey came in and wrote this crossover story with Wolverine, Punisher, and Ghost Rider, and took place in the suburbs, and it was Mephisto's son, who had debuted in Daredevil. Anyway, there's interviews about that, what was going on in the early 90s and what was coming out. I'm one of the few people that seems to really, I'm fine with John Romita's art, you know what I mean? And this was a great find because I ended up buying this off of eBay, and I wasn't real happy with the shape of the comic, grade of the comic or whatever it was when it came in. But this is a fun book, right? And I sat down and I've talked about it before in a video. I don't know who all rewatches this stuff and everything, but I may do it again. But anyway, this is Marvel Comics Presents with a John Byrne cover, right? Number 18. The significance of this is that John Byrne was coming back to Marvel slowly from his Superman DC stint, right? He came in and he took over Star Brand, made it bi-monthly, had Tom Palmer doing the inks. He was writing and penciling it. And then he came in and he wanted to get these B-list characters so that, he'd been on the Superman, the number one superhero at DC. They're the Superman and things like that. And he wanted to come in and he wanted to have these B-list character stuff that he can play around and do his own sort of thing. He ended up doing Namor and She-Hulk and West Coast Avengers, turned it into Avengers West Coast and a few things, right? Playing around with the Vision. And this was a prequel to his sensational She-Hulk. As you can see, it's a wraparound cover with the great Willie Lumpkin. And it turns out that all those comic books and She-Hulk dolls are from, what is going on? There we go. Or, they're in a stack, in his sack, if you will, where and we get a taste of what She-Hulk is going to be. And this was the first time She-Hulk did an a la Ambush Bug and Animal Man and might as well say Deadpool at this point, years before that. And she talks directly to the audience. She breaks the fourth wall. She's talking to the Thing. on the phone, and then all of a sudden Doctor Doom attacks. All these villains come in. She gets attacked by Doctor Doom, and Doctor Doom is hot now, because of all the movies Magneto hits. But what I loved is Stan Lee and Mobius were doing a Silver Surfer epic 2-issue miniseries at the time. So when Galactus arrives, he has She-Hulk look out her window, say "Holy Mobius," and there's Galactus in Mobius style. I thought was hilarious. And this was all a prequel for her to tell us to go buy her book when it comes out. Yeah. I love stuff like that. So this is going to go in my John Byrne She-Hulk box. I have one copy. Funnily enough, I found it for in better shape at this comic book convention, right? I think I got this for $1. I could have got 2 or 3 issues of Gru. I am going to be completing the 120 issues because apparently I have all. The only other comic that's sort of hard to find if you really want to do this is the first appearance of Rufio the dog. The last issue is such a low print run that it's worth quite a bit. I found it at a flea market 2-3 years ago. So I'm like, I got like 60 issues of this 120 issue series. I might as well just go for it. So I'm always keeping an eye for volume 2 that came out at Epic Comics. So yeah, to me, this really makes me think of 1985 when I was 12, because even the stepdad and my brother and all of us, we knew Sergio Aragonis through Mad, so we liked it. So there were some random issues of this floating around with Savage Sword of Conan, in the house. Now, Sheldon Drum, he owns Heroes Are Hard to Find. He runs Heroes Con. If you get on YouTube and look up Sheldon Drum of Heroes Con, you're going to find many local news stations interviewing him and showing his secret warehouse of comics. In the 70s, he went to Marvel. He got on a bus from North Carolina, went to the offices of Marvel, did a tour before it was a thing to do because he wanted to be in comics, and he soon realized he's not good enough to do the comics. So what did he do? He came back down, opened a comic book shop in the 70s, and over the years he has become friends with so many people in the comic book industry. George Perez, Marv Wolfman, when he started doing Heroes Con in Charlotte back in I think 1982, and it's still been going strong. Getting bigger and bigger and setting records for attendance and stuff like that. I've seen Sheldon walk Jim Shooter around, letting him know what's going on. I've heard people in the comic book industry like Marv Wolf and George Perez all talk about Sheldon. Locally in Abingdon, Virginia, there's an art institute, our little art museum, and Charles Vess will donate stuff sometimes to them to make it a gallery so people can come look at his stuff and even get it back. Sheldon was nice enough to get his original art several times, and this was just the stuff that he was willing to loan out and let people borrow. I can only imagine the stuff that he has that he keeps and doesn't let anybody see when it comes to original art and stuff. We're talking pages of John Romita, Silver Age Spider-Man that I saw, and Charles Vess Sandman original pages, and Jack Kirby original pages from the Silver Age, and all that stuff. So Sheldon Drum is quite a guy. But what's great is if you find him at a con, he does all the local cons, not just his Heroes Con. And what he'll do is he'll have his boxes set out. He has his wall books. It's the most professional, biggest vendor you're going to see there, in my opinion, and stuff. And what he started doing, I've noticed over the years, is that he'll have just a stack of books that are either $1 or $5. You can talk to him. It's like he's got his long boxes that are priced, and then he's just got these stacks of books. And he said, all these are $5. And I ended up talking to him about this. I caught his attention because I saw this book. I told Anderson, this takes place in Rutledge, Vermont. I have a video called The Secret Crossover that I did like in 2010 or 12, The Secret Crossover of Marvel and DC. This book crosses over the Roy Thomas, Gary Conway, Lynn Wein, and Roy Thomas or Lynn Wein, Gary Conway. Yeah. Anyway, they secretly had one guy was writing Justice League, one guy was writing Bizarre Adventures or something, where it's the issue where Beast ended up turning gray or something, whatever that was in, right? And then Thor and Justice League, right? And there's a thread where Roy Thomas, Lynn Wein, Glennis Wein, and Gary Conway are in Rutledge, Vermont, a real place, during a real parade that takes place in Rutledge, Vermont, where people in the parade dress up like superheroes from DC and Thor and them. This is in the early 70s. And Thor is one of those books. I had this over there from the stepdad's collection that's all beat up and the staples aren't even in. And he looked at me. He was like, Rutledge is a real place. I'm like, I know. And we talked about that little secret crossover. So here's Rutledge, Vermont. These characters are in the parade. And down here in the corner are all the writers: Lynn Wein, Roy Thomas, Gary Conway, Glennis Wynn. In all of those books that they were working on at DC and Marvel, they carried out a thread of them walking through Rutledge, Vermont. And there's some magic in the Justice League issue. There's some magic that goes on, and some of the people dressed up like Spider-Man and Captain America end up becoming empowered, and they're fighting the Justice League. That's how they got up with this. So this is the Thor issue that crosses over with those. So this is Thor 207. Look up the Rutledge, Vermont secret crossover of the early 70s, or try to find my video from way back when. And I explained the secret crossover. One of the coolest things I ever heard, and was lucky to kind of put together because the stepdad I still have some of those books from the stepdad's collection. All right. Problem One Collector. Marvel Age also had a lot of great cover art that major artists would do, especially for the Marvel Age issues. Yeah, Todd McFarlane. I have the Spider-Man Todd McFarlane cover. In 1990, John Byrne did a cover because they were having Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1 come out, New Warriors #1, I don't know, Quasar #1, New Warriors #1, Ghost Rider #1, and John Byrne did a cover with all of those on there. And of course, like I said, there's a Spider-Man McFarlane cover that actually solves a wall book, you know. Now, guys, get ready to fall down because Howler Mouse has picked up some of the books that are relatively new. I know they've come out in at least the last 2 years, I think. Let me look at the year here on these. These are also suggested for mature readers. 2023. So these are go far as back as 2023, maybe to 2024, right? And you guys are going to know this is one of the staples of the Howler Mouse collection, if you will, in his history, because I've always mentioned it and I've shown it, and we've tried to have shows where I had people come on here and we want to show our favorite Conan stories. I've talked about Red Nails before. Savage Sword of Conan is my book. Robert E. Howard books. I've got a bunch over here. L. Sprague the Camp. Always trying to learn about it. So I took a chance because these ended up being, come on, I'm froze up. There we go. These ended up being 50 cents a piece, guys. 50 cents a piece, right? So I had to give them a shot, right? So here we go. Conan the Barbarian through Titan Comics, Zeb Wells, doing their best John Buscema inspired artwork, if you will. So here's #4 with this cover. All right, we're going to go slow because it looks like my internet connection is messing up. It must be storming. Okay, we got #5. Like I said, 50 cents a piece, guys. I told you I'm very patient with these. I figured I would check these out in a long box at some point. Here is #8. And I hate when people do covers like this. I'm not into the cartoony stuff, right? Maybe this is manga influenced. I don't know what this is. I don't know the context. I don't think this style is appropriate for a Conan the Barbarian book, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? The world is not going to stop revolving over a bad cover. Okay. I don't know who this is for. You know what I mean? I don't know who they're trying to get with this. There we go. I love this cover. It's very much Frazetta inspired with the colors. And it also has like a touch of Richard Corbin, in my opinion, right? So this is #11. Okay, we'll take that in. Okay, is that not cool? I think that's very cool. And then we jump up all the way to #12 because so I didn't get all of them. Yeah, they had a few issues going all the way up to 20. So I think what I did is I just got a sample, is what I did, right? To see if these are worth reading, right? They also had a couple issues of King Conan by Jason Aaron, some of the last issues that Marvel did before the license ran out or was took from him or whatever happened there, right? Now, guys, there's people out there who are fans of this next book. and uh, and of this character in general. And I'm a fan of the pulps. Okay, I'm a fan of Flash Gordon, big time. Flash Gordon. I have a huge appreciation for this next character. Right. Um, Doc Savage, Charlton 66 sent me some beat up paperbacks for me to properly read Doc Savage in the pulps. And what Planetary, if you've read Planetary, how they sort of did an ode to, the shadow a little bit without using the shadow and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it is the shadow. And in the 70s, I was just born when this book came out. This is a book that highly influenced Batman to the point that some people claim there's some plagiarism. Who knows? Zorro and the Shadow and the Man Who Laughs. All there's so many things that inspired Batman, right? But like they got the license at DC, and somewhere I have the Batman issue where Mike Cluta did Mike Cluta. I think he did the cover, and we had Batman meets the Shadow, and then the Shadow got 12 issue series at DC. These are beautiful covers. Frank Robbins done the cover. Mike Cluta did a lot of the art on this. Dino O'Neill did the writing. Uh, Looks like I froze up again. There we go. Yeah, we're having the connection problems. Anyway, if you can see me, let me know, because I'm just going to barrel through here, right? So I'm bound, after I catalog and bag these, I am bound to almost have all 12 issues and not 12 issues. And I'm pretty sure 12 issues came out, right? But some of these books I just never imagined I'd be able to find, right? They are, like I said, a little discolored, a little beat up. They're 50 years old. They're not bagged, but they're flat. They're complete. They still have a sheen on them, like they're new. The coloring is not bad here. Frank Robbins and Denny O'Neil did this one. And like I said, these have Mike Cluta covers on some of these. Here he goes. He meets the Avenger, which was great because Jack Kirby they were doing an Avengers book, the original stone-faced, gray-skinned Avenger, if you will. So that was cool to have them cross over. Here's number 6. Here's number 7. Looks like it's another Frank Robbins with a Quasimodo. It's not Igor, it's Igor. Walk This Way. Here's a great one. Another Frank Robbins, number 8. He fights a mummy. A lot of Frank Robbins, a lot of people do not. Back in the day, I don't know if anybody even knows who he is now, but Frank Robbins was a golden age guy. And it was great that he was still working, in my opinion. And then when Roy Thomas did the Invaders at Marvel, where it was the adventures of Captain Marvel, Namor, Human Torch, Toro, Bucky, Spitfire, Union Jack, all those guys in World War II, Frank Robbins came in and was doing the art, and people absolutely hated it. You can read the letter columns of people complaining. I never understood it. This is an actual golden age 1940s artist doing a book set in the 40s. So I was always fine with it. Some of his storytelling could have been more dynamic. So those were very cool to find, right? And yeah, this is stuck in there. But anyway, this is number 2 of a 3-issue prestige format series that I'm probably going to end up selling because I have issue 1 and 3. And this is called, as you can see, JLA, Act of God. Doug Munch, Dave Ross, George Freeman did this. And as you can see, something happens to where anybody that had powers, they lost their powers for some reason. But the people who had things like science-based powers that weren't biological or internal, like Sandman. The reason I got it to pick up and read it is because Jack Knight Starman is in here, and he has his cosmic rod. He doesn't have any superpowers. He knows a little bit of kung fu. You know what I mean? And he has his wits, and then he has his star staff, right? So people like Batman and Starman and a lot of the street level guys were picking up the slack left over by Superman and the Flash and everybody. And for some reason, all their powers were gone. So now I can read this because it's all 3 issues and see if I want to keep it or get rid of it, right? Powerless, helpless, merely human, but in the ashes of defeat, the embers of salvation still glow strong. Now the heroes of Earth must turn to the one man who can mold their mere humanity into something far, far greater. If he succeeds, Earth will witness the dawn of a new age of heroes. If he fails, well, he never fails. So who knows what's going on here, you know. So I'll get to finally read that all the way through, see if I want to keep it. Now, this book, I've told you as a kid, one of the first comic books that really stuck out to me. And this is when I was a little kid and I wasn't putting the Prime One Collector says, I love the pulps myself. The Shadow is my favorite. Are you guys able? I'm getting told that the connection is bad. So let me know if you're seeing me here or if I need to back up and re-show some of these books. But anyway, this book here in particular, I'm going to show you, my CLZ app says I have it. I remember having it. I had all 3 of these issues that more or less reprint the first 6 issues, 6 books of Swamp Thing. And as a kid, when I was watching Johnny Quest and I was becoming a fan of, I was reading some Jack Kirby Fantastic Four. I was reading X-Men #3 out of the Stepdad's collection. I was reading the Yesterday Quest on Avengers and stuff. The Stepdad was really a Marvel nut and a Doctor Doom guy and a Jack Kirby guy, which is all good. And he had the Forever People, and I still have some of the books from his little collection that he was able to recoup and keep after he went to the Navy, and his mom gave away his books. But the thing about it is that Swamp Thing #2 was a book that burnt a hole in my brain. And in the last couple of years, I was able to actually buy me a proper copy. But for years, I was able to read it through these $3 books, right? This was a series. I cannot remember what it's called off the top of my head. This is in Mylar. I don't want to reopen it. But despite the fact that these are reprints, I don't know where this went in my collection. It disappeared. I had it, right? So anyway, this is February 1980. The award-winning Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson Wonderment at its best, and this reprints issue 5 and 6 of Len Wein's Swamp Thing back in the day. And these DC specials, I think that's what this series is called. Some of these are actually key books, even though that they're reprints and stuff for the thing. Of course, this is in Mylar. I ended up getting this for $3. I made a stack of books, rounded it off, spent about $8 at this guy's booth, right? He had 50% off. So I have the first of this issue that reprinted issue 1 and 2 with a new Bernie Wrightson wraparound cover. Bernie Wrightson signed it for me years ago, right? At Heroes Con, right? So, yeah, these have new wraparound covers, and they reprint the first 6 books. This is the 3rd one. That's issue 5 and 6. Swamp Thing to me is a timeless comic because of the setting, right? You're in a swamp, close to nature. You can do a lot of things out there in the swamp and have plant-based powers and stuff because you do not have to include technology. You know what I mean? You don't always have to show the cars. You don't have to show the fashion of the people around, the bell bottoms, the hip huggers, the mullets, anything as we go through the years and stuff, right? And that's one of the things that keeps this book from getting dated. You can go into a swamp now, and some places the swamps have not changed in 100 years and stuff, right? There's places around me where basically they've just sort of done a little bit of logging, but you go deep enough and there's places that nobody's done anything with except to walk through and maybe pitch a tent every now and then, So guys, I'm looking at this and that seems to be it. So everybody, thanks for joining me tonight on this Sunday night. Make sure you like the video. Go ahead and share it if you wish. If you're watching on a rewind, make sure you share it. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribed. It seems like the ebb and flow of this channel is just amazing to me because of my backlog of videos. Back when I had more of a potato than a camera, bad lighting and microphones. And I'm getting about between 2,000 and 4,000 views per week just on that stuff. And of course, with the new stuff and everything, right? So make sure you hit that bell because I'll be shooting some vids. And next week we are going on vacation, so hopefully I'll have some videos maybe scheduled to they'll be uploaded and then scheduled to be public over the next week or so and everything, right? So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you hit that bell so you know when they're popping up. Always love the feedback. Always love suggestions. Always love the comments. It's actually the comments that kept me going when I just was not feeling the magic either for a little bit. But it was always great to do a live show and actually talk to everybody and, stuff like that. So you are appreciated. Thanks, Howler. Have a great night. You guys too. And that's a good place to do it. So be excellent with each other. Read your comics. And remember, guys, we're all in this together. All right. Later.